Taxes are the only certainty. Will 20% of people have society? Yes, I have made it on my own in this world. Will not to take care of time around a 2-year-old. I'm gonna start my own nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. Well, let me talk a bit about the weather. You must admit it's not very clever. Don't get me wrong, it's not an anti-British song. Well, there is nowhere I would rather be wrong. I'm gonna start my own nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. There are just a few things that I would like to say about the UK and how I think it has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up, but you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
And we're away. Just normal political muted technology. Sort of, none of us could hear the music. So I was just waiting for the go, and we're off without any music today. I hear you've been listening to the music, and I love that tune as well. Yes, absolutely. Who was headbanging? Oh, Kirsty Smith. Great that you were enjoying it. Right, well, oh, wow. We've got a fab show for you tonight, including a question where really you are going to have to do some work. You are going to have to tell us things if it's going to work. But more of that later. Let's start by welcoming my wonderful guests. Jane, hello again.
Hello, thank you for having me back.
Oh, I think it's the other way around, isn't it? You're the boss. Hi, Kerry. 2 weeks in a row.
I know I'm getting popular on here, aren't I now?
You were brilliant last week. You were just brilliant last week. And we welcome Mark Lungley. So thank you for joining us.
No problem. So always a pleasure to be here. Thought I wouldn't be impartial tonight.
What's Libab?
Tories Libab.
That's a Midlands thing.
What does it mean, Libab?
Tories lie, babe. Bab is a word.
Tories lie, kidder. and sort of, you
So,
know.
yeah, it would be something like that. Tories like it, but it's actually Brummie rather than Black Country. But and it was actually coined by everyone's favourite Brummie MP, viral herself, Jess Phillips. But we'll leave it at that.
Well, that's grim.
True for all that.
Sorry to start with that horror.
Let's move on and have a look at the moment of the week. So I'm guessing that it's finished. And, off we go. Who am I going to get? Mark, what was your moment of this week?
Oh, there's been so many. Obviously, you could start quickly with what's going on in the US with insulin, locking it down to $30 rather than £300. But or also looking at where the Portugal is now looking at capping profits to 15% maximum on supermarkets good stuff as well. But one thing I found earlier today is basically, I'm sure you may have heard the word data center. What's probably happening with all our videos is they're going up into the web and going into what we call a data center where all data is collected. Now that creates an incredible lot of heat. Now, normally that is actually just lost. It's just sent out into the ether to dissipate. But in Exmouth, which is the correct way to say Exmouth, but Exmouth, they're actually now powering a pool to heat up the water of the pool to a constant 30 degrees and keeping the water with the heat from that. So basically all the heat you get when you're using computers. And it's not an unusual thing. In the Scandinavian countries, they actually use it as a cooperative thing to heat houses, which I think is quite a cool thing. I'd never seen that before, and it just makes so much sense to use the heat.
That we I mean, so much of this heat that we waste. I mean, there was a big deal a while ago, wasn't there, when sort of they were using the heat from crematoriums to heat local heating systems. Terry, thank you for that, Mark. What was your moment of the week?
This is a good moment of the week. Well, it is kind of. I think it's better than my controversial moment of the week last week.
Did you get into trouble for that?
I haven't opened many emails this week, I'll tell the truth. I probably did, but I'm not really bothered. My moment of the week was actually a reporter, Greg Easthill from the North East, who's on Tyne Tees News. He interviewed me this time last year when Unite Community done a big demonstration outside Rishi Sunak's office. And we were actually campaigning about his heated swimming pool, his private tennis court. And Greg Easthill was actually outside Rishi Sunak's heated swimming pool last night. And people are starting to mourn. And we've been campaigning about this for the last year. And people are just, don't even chuck on me yet, open their eyes, if you know what I mean. Even though Unite Community have been on this one for a big time. So, yeah, that's a bit of my moment of the week. Otherwise, it'll just be a sad moment of the week, but that's fine.
That's true. I mean, I was reading The Guardian today, and they're looking forward to the budget, and they've pointed out that the budget is being made by a multi-millionaire chancellor and a prime minister who is richer than the king. And sort of, what can we expect from that? But maybe
makes me bad, John.
Jane. This will be something about some obscure human rights group in Afghanistan, is it?
So this week, I've seen an article in the Big Issue, and it's really sad. There was a fire in a flat in Tower Hamlets, and a person died. 18 people living in that flat.
Yes.
They're being charged £100 a week for a bunk bed, and that is what you get when you get rid of all the social housing and don't regulate rents. That's what's happening in this country. It's disgusting.
I absolutely, I saw that, and it reminded me of Lord Shaftesbury in the 19th century, going round and finding some of these doss houses where the same thing went on, where basically they just piled so many people into the room, and it's unhealthy. They're all just passing germs with the air gets fetid, and sort of just these. This is modern Britain, where we're just letting people be taken advantage of. And
Rachmanism.
Yeah, Rachmanism, yes. Absolutely dreadful. Thank you for that, Jane, and absolutely spot on. Well done. Okay, I'm going to move on to our big topic today, but let's see if somebody can tell me when the music comes to an end for the big story.
Now it's time for the big story.
And apparently it's finished, and I can start. Thank you very much to the tech team in the background there. And the big story today is a double header, because it's kind of connected, isn't it? We're going to look at Gary Lineker first, but then we're going to move on to the illegal immigration bill, which is the most delightful mistitle, an illegal immigration bill. But let's talk about Gary Lineker first. Mark Lungley, tell us all about it and tell us what you felt about it.
Right. Well, basically, we've got two things, and it's all about impartiality. Now, impartiality is a big thing. Obviously, I'm really being impartial tonight with my thoughts on the Tories. But the question is, and as a former radio presenter, you have to be impartial when you're on air. Now, what Gary did was he sent out a tweet, which I personally agree with, and I wrote a big thread on it on both Twitter and Facebook. You can probably find me and about it, and I know you've done something similar, I think, John, as well, about it. And I have to say I agree with him. But the question has been: when does the impartiality stop? My thoughts are, when you say good night on your program, be that on the radio, on the TV, then you are your own person, and you can say what you like on your Twitter, on your Facebook, to whoever they think. Now, others are saying, "Oh, that's not fair." I don't. I think it's right. Once you've put down the faders, if you're a radio presenter, or the camera's gone to black, you are your own person. But the Tories don't like that. To me, it's just if it was like the countless others who we've got Lord Sugar, Andrew Neil, who was even who was not impartial on his shows. And tell me what's wrong with what's right with socialism, when he was talking to Owen Jones once on that show, that matey show they used to have after question time. But the simple question is, what is responsibility of presenters when they come off air? And I think that once they're off air, that is they are off air. That's their own comments. It's not the BBC. It's not any other program. And also the question is about what he said. And I personally think there's no argument about that. There's various things. There's been the cartoons in the Daily Mail, which are exactly the same in 2015 as cartoons that were posted on billboards by the German people about Jews. Obviously, the ones that Daily Mail used were about Muslims coming into Europe. And there are so many.
Just going to interrupt you, Mark. I got some questions about the first point that you made. When I was a teacher, my responsibility for behaviour did not end when I walked out the school. If I'd been found lying drunk in the middle of the town centre, if I'd have gone on a mad rampage, sort of graffitiing all over the place, complaints would have been made, and I would have been responsible for stuff I did out of school. So surely there's a responsibility on people like Gary Lineker to live up to the celebrity status that they have gained through their job.
I mean, that is obviously conduct, but your opinion, I think that is slightly different. As a teacher, you are held to a certain view, a certain responsibility of how you conduct yourself, but you should be able to hold an honest opinion Would you not say, John?
Well, yes, I agree with you, but I was asking. I felt that I'd like to answer the question, sort of because there were many people who were saying exactly that same thing. I agree with you that what they were doing, they were totally ignoring the Alan Sugars of this world and what they did, and Jimmy Savile, by the way, openly campaigned for the Tory party, but that they were saying that. He shouldn't have been acting like that because the things were connected. The John Crace in The Guardian said Gary Lineker won, BBC nil. Do you think that Gary Lineker has won his battle?
I think he has, because they've literally had to allow him back with no gagging or anything like that, and that's because of his contract. Obviously, they are looking at their social media policies, but I do think, and I think there's a lot of polls have said this, that if you're not in the news production end, then you know, once you get outside, as long as you are civil, and I don't think Gary was perfectly civil, you can say you can hold honest opinions. It's one of those things. But one thing we ought to talk about, being socialist think tank, is this whole situation with Match of the Day, and the sports people show solidarity.
Yes,
and holding your Labour works. Look how quickly they've had to turn around, and I think the Tory MPs misjudged it.
Well, I'll come to that in a little while. The sort of just going back to what you were saying about the right to say, people having the right to say, is that not a two-edged sword? I mean, what happens if we get some very famous celebrity presenters with game shows and sports shows who then come out stating openly fascist views, views with which sort of influencing people through their celebrity with views which are racist? Are we not making, in defending what we agree with, making a rod for our own back for the future?
Well, the thing is, you could think about it like with our political sphere, because we have the first past the post system. Yes, it has denied the likes of Nigel Farage access to Parliament, but if he had been in Parliament, don't you think that he would have had to have given reasoned arguments, which could have been shut down? And if we cut off one thing, the things we don't like, what's to stop people cutting off the things we like? You know, what is it they say? The way to keep a country happy is to have a very narrow field of discussion, but very lively discussion. Should we not be learning discourse to discuss with people who have fascist views and take them down? That's part of the fun, I think, of Twitter, is to discuss this with people. And it's very interesting how the number of people that block you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Jane, I want to talk to you about his language, because John Ashworth went, I think it's John Ashworth, the Labour Shadow Health Secretary, went on, and he said that he absolutely defended Gary Lineker's right to say it, but that nobody in the Labour Party would have ever said what he said. And the problem was that he used the Nazi analogy. He said it was, and this always gets people into trouble. And do you think that basically it wasn't so much that he defended the immigrants, but that he did so in such language, comparing it to Nazi Germany?
Do you mean the reason that he was suspended was that?
The reason it caused so much offence, yes.
I think he didn't call the government Nazis. He said the language they were using wasn't dissimilar. So I think it is a very emotive subject. But I mean, I think he was right. The language is similar to some of the language used in Germany in the 1930s. And I think my impression is that this was perhaps seen as an opportunity by a BBC that's being led by very right-thinking people with a very, just, you know, a strong political leaning towards the right of the Conservative Party. I think they saw a chance to jump on someone who was saying things that weren't convenient for them. They thought they could get away with it, but they tried to push their luck a bit too far. I think we seem to have a government and actually an opposition as well, and a media who seems to think that the population is a lot more bigoted and racist than we actually are. I think they really underestimate the people of this country. They keep on getting it wrong. And it's sad to hear that from Labour, because what I would say is that Labour at the moment keeps on listening to see what people are saying, to find out what they think they should be saying. And we don't need that. We're looking for leaders who will lead with integrity and show us values and be an example for us to follow, not just listen to what vicious gossip and Chinese whispers are going around and then repeat that and think that that's going to get them votes, because that's not what we need, especially not in a crisis that we see like the one we see ourselves in now.
Labour has generally condemned what was going on. They've openly accused the BBC of being interfered with by the government, and so I can't remember who it was, but she said that it was like Putin's Russia. Now, do you think? I mean, one of the problems with what Gary Lineker said was that people were able to say it's nothing like Nazi Germany here. I mean, it's reminiscent, perhaps, redolent of the very early days, but it's not like that. And people like Suella Braverman were able to sort of accuse him of trivializing the Holocaust, really. Now, is it not the same when you're saying that what we've got now is like Putin's Russia? Is that not an overstatement that actually, in fact, damages the cause rather than helping it?
I would say, obviously, as you say, the 1945 wasn't the same as 1933. There was a slow build in Germany with things getting worse and worse. So to say that the language was reminiscent of 1930s Germany isn't to say that they're like the Nazi Party of the 1940s. I wouldn't say it's trivializing to say that it's like Putin's Russia, but I would say that I don't think it's correct, because in Putin's Russia, Gary Lineker would have been arrested on some trumped-up charges and chucked in prison by now. But that's not what's happened. What's happened was very wrong, but not exactly what would have happened in Russia at the moment.
Harry, what do you think becomes of the BBC now?
I just think they're a bunch of hypocrites. I genuinely do. Can you remember that time on Newsnight when Corbyn was photoshopped wearing something Russian or whatever like that? Yeah, and they absolutely annihilated Jeremy Corbyn. Andrew Neil is isn't he a chair and a big massive donor of the Tories? He's not actually demonised in the public domain, is he, for supporting the Tories? And because Gary Lineker's a football pundit who's got a soul and a bit of a humanist about him, he's deemed as the bad one. The same partiality, but the BBC is not impartial, as we all know. It's far from. I won't swear. I won't use my terminology when it comes to the BBC. But it's all right for Andrew Neil to spout his drivel about the left wing and all that, and he's a paid employee of the BBC. But once Gary Lineker does it and gets massive public support, and from his colleagues in the BBC, he's deemed as the bad one. What is all that about?
Do you think, Kerry, that? Do you think that it's because the BBC is evilly right wing? Or do you think that it's because the BBC is scared of a government that could revoke the licence fee at any time and is threatening to do so? Is it because they're naturally right wing, or is it because they are frightened of annoying the government?
The BBC is beyond right wing. I don't care what anybody says. You watch one programme, right, the 6 o'clock news, the BBC, you watch the ITV news at 6:30. They're completely different news broadcasts. They are completely and utterly different. The BBC is got their own biased agenda to basically, in my terminology, which might sound wrong again, to lick the bumholes of the Tories because they're scared of offending them because they might scrap the TV license. The BBC is supposed to be impartial. It is the biggest. I mean, you look at that. What's that Welsh bloke called? Hugh Edwards. I mean, he might as well have cried when you've seen him at election results and stuff. Do you know what I mean? And it's far from. All these Tory donors can work in the BBC and be these big parts of the BBC, but because Gary Lineker has spoke out about this right-wing, technically Nazi government, which they are, I don't care what anyone says, he's deemed as the bad one. Like, if he was deemed as that bad one so much, why have they allowed him back on the show? Why isn't he just been sacked?
Well, I mean, what it was, I can't remember whether it was Mark or Jane who, I think it was Mark who pointed out that solidarity was what did it for. Owen Jones says that we can rejoice because this constantly invasive right-wing pressure to move the BBC rightwards has suffered a setback, but that we need to learn the lessons because it's going to start again as soon as this is over. What are those?
Look at Fiona Bruce in domestic violence. She's had to stand down from refuge because of her comments about Johnson on the other week, like Thursday's question time. It's the most non-biased corporation ever.
So what have we got to do now to keep it to keep it going in the right direction and sort of actually in the left direction?
Well, maybe I shouldn't say this out aloud, but I'll say it on here. I don't pay a TV license. I refuse to pay it. I've withdrawn my rights to pay my TV license. I refuse to pay for that complete and utter pile of tosh. I won't have it, and I don't pay it. I refuse. I've withdrew my rights. And anyone can do that. I refuse to pay. I won't pay for that biased crap.
When you stop paying your license fee, Kerry, is it that you can't watch any television from any channel?
No, just the BBC and live broadcasting. Can watch ITV, not BBC.
Can somebody look that up on the... I think that you can't watch the TV at all. I think you can't operate machinery that has the capacity to receive the BBC.
Well, I hope there's no telly men on here who's going to come and give me a fine.
I think. I mean, and the other thing is, I think, Kerry, I think you'll have to start paying it because I think it extends also to computers. I have the ability to watch the BBC iPlayer on my computer, and so you just got to be very careful. Worthwhile looking up what the rules about.
I won't say out in here because I'm probably doing illegal things by logging into my mum's iPlayer who does pay her telly license.
Oh, your mum's okay then. You can do it. You can watch it at your mum's.
No, my own house, yeah. But yeah, that's fine. But yeah, I just think it's not non-impartial. The BBC is the most non-impartial corporation ever.
There are many people,
in my opinion,
who watch television and they just won't. They won't pay their license. One last question is: do you think that Gary Lineker has been used here? Because I think, and I'm going to segue just brilliantly. If you're watching this, we're going to segue brilliantly now. Do you think that this was a dead cat? Do you think that Gary Lineker has just been used by people who are wanting to direct attention away from the illegal immigration bill?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
I think that Gary Lineker spoke his truth, and the Tories have made a big mountain out of a molehill, like a distraction tactic, yeah. But it's backfired on them because he's been reinstated.
You see, well, all I see is that so Mark.
I've just been quickly having a look on tvlicensing.co.uk, and it
Get
says
me fined, Mark. Shush.
because we have to be with our Empress stuff.
I mean,
No,
we
I
have
know,
to
I'm
not
sorry.
advise our listeners wrongly.
All right.
What did it say, Mark?
You don't need a TV license if you never watch live on any TV channel, TV service, or streaming service. Because one thing I'd just like to quickly talk about is I used to like the BBC because the basic principle is great. It means it was meant to cover anything. The idea was the news should cover any process, but with more than 500 people. Well, that doesn't happen now. NHS protests anybody on Sunday. But the thing is it still needed now, is the question. And that is what the Tories wanted to do. Yes, we won this battle, but their main end game is to get rid of the license, and they're going to be arguing that. Now they're going to say that Lineker was impartial. Why should we pay for him?
You see, all I see is that last night, unnoticed, the Tories passed the second reading of the illegal immigration bill, and all that the left were doing were rejoicing about the fact that Gary Lineker was going to be back on Match of the Day. I just worry. Jane, let's move to the immigration bill now. Tell us about the bill and tell us what you think about it.
So this bill had its second reading in the House of Commons yesterday, which is quite scary. I think it only had a week between readings, which is very unusual. It gives the Home Secretary powers to deport migrants before having an asylum claim heard. So according to the 1951 United Nations Convention on Refugees, any person has the right to apply for asylum in any country that has signed the agreement, and we're one of 149 countries that have signed it, regardless of whether they've come through non-legal or illegal means to get to the country, and regardless of whether it's the first, second, or any number country that they get to. So this bill says that anyone who comes to this country through illegal methods will be denied that right to claim asylum, will be put in a detention centre without trial and detained pending return either to their home country or what the UK government deemed to be a safe third country, which they would deem Rwanda to be, for example. And this would mean children arriving in small boats would be detained in immigration centres as well. It's a horrible piece of legislation, and despite Suella Braverman going on TV shows during the week and other Tory ministers saying that this isn't illegal several times very clearly, on the front of the bill that was presented to Parliament, it has a statement by Suella Braverman saying, "I am unable to make a statement that in my view the provisions of the illegal migration bill are compatible with the Convention of Human Rights for Refugees, but the government nevertheless wishes the House to proceed with the bill." So it literally has written on the front that they can't say that it's not in contravention of the convention, but they've been going on TV saying that it's not illegal. It's a horrible piece of legislation. It's an embarrassment, and I think, is it just Belarus and Russia that have left the Universal Declaration of Human Rights? Is that all there's several bits of legislation which this goes against. So we'd be joining a club with Belarus and Russia, basically, in terms of not committing to the European Convention on Human Rights, which guarantees right to free and fair elections, got a right to not be tortured, right to freedom of religion, lots of basic human rights that we take for granted. And when you look at what's happening in Belarus and Russia, that's not a club that I'd want to be a part of in terms of how they think it's okay to treat people. So this is, it's very depressing, very upsetting. It's almost certainly illegal. It's an embarrassment.
I mean, it's being opposed by loads of people who you'd be surprised. I mean, Theresa May is the woman who brought in the hostile environment, and yet she's there saying that it will deny children anti-slavery protections. Then we got Nimco Ali, who was a Home Office advisor, Robert Buckland and Caroline Noakes, who are Tory MPs, calling it immeasurably cruel. Archbishop of York is weighing in. I mean, sort of, why are the Tories pressing ahead with this, Jane, in the absolute teeth of so many right-wing politicians telling them that they shouldn't be doing so? Are they cruising for a bruising? What's going on here?
There's a lot of conjecture about this, that they know that this is going to be challenged legally, that they don't expect to win that battle legally against the European Union, because it's almost certain that the European Court of Human Rights will challenge this, and that can then be used as a reason to take us out of the European Court of Human Rights,
Right.
which is frightening as well.
I also, I mean, Raphael Baer in The Guardian says that basically it's a trick to draw Labour out so they can, into opposition, into opposing it, so they can accuse Labour of being the party of open borders. I mean, do you think that this is what Raphael Baer says, a Tory election leaflet, not a law?
I think it's difficult to know just how far they'll have to push Labour before they'll actually come out against anything, to be honest. Perhaps that's part of the reason why they're pushing it quite so far, because what do they need to do before this is outright condemned for the inhumanity that it is by the Labour Party? Because that's not been the focus of the statements that have been made by many Labour MPs.
Just one last thing before I let you go, because you're so clever, and if I'm going to ask you a question you don't know the answer to, I'm so sorry, I haven't warned you about this, but Yvette Cooper said that this law is a trafficker's charter. Now, I didn't understand that. It's sort of basically saying, well, arrest anybody who sets foot on the land. How is that a trafficker's charter? Do you understand why she said that? What she meant by it?
I would certainly say that it absolutely won't be the solution to stopping the illegal trafficking and the small boats that they're saying it will be, because these people are absolutely desperate, and the only way to stop that is to allow people to claim asylum before they come to this country, allow them to come here. I don't know. It's just going to make people more desperate. It's going to push people underground, because there'll be even more pressure to not be found once you're here. It'll open up a black market and human trafficking.
That's it, is it? Right. Oh, I'm think I'm losing. It's okay. I'm back. Thank you, Jane. I understand now. God bless you, Perry. What do you reckon? I mean, Yvette Cooper's come out against it. The Labour tried an amendment to sort of say that it's against all the principles this country stands for. I mean, do you think that Labour have come out of this looking good, or so? What do you think of Labour's stance?
I just want to know what happened to the United Nations Convention of children's rights. I want to know what's happened to that. I think this bill reminds me of the Trump thing, like children in cages who've come from Mexico. Can you remember the outcry about that? And like the UN Convention of Children's Rights stipulates so many things. And I think that Yvette Cooper is kind of right, because what's stopping a child sex trafficker bringing a child in a dinghy, and that child's been brought to the UK to be sexually trafficked? What is stopping that? And I think that when it comes to children within this bill's wrong anyway, but children in this bill is just inhumanely wrong. Yes. And I mean, can anyone remember that little 2-year-old boy who was floating in the sea and he was dead? God love him. Like, how is a country, one of the 6th or 5th richest nation in the world, allowing that to happen? Are we like going backward in time, or what? It's literally as though like we're going, and they're only doing it to feed the racist voters who voted to get Boris in 2019. We'll get rid of the boats, we'll do whatever, and it's just causing so much more right-wing fascist ideology in this country. And it's really like this thing about this bill and children and like stuff like that. That is a big thing for me. It's really bugging me. I think that imagine like if a child from the UK was trafficked to Italy, shall we say, just for example. Imagine the outcry that would come from the UK. Imagine the outcry. I think it's a bit double standard. I just think you're talking about children here. You're not on about adults, you're about kids.
Just before I move on, Kerry, I mean, we've got Labour's promises here that they'll crack down on the criminal smuggler gangs, that they'll clear the backlog and end hotel use. They'll have agreements with France. They'll reform resettlement schemes, and they'll help refugees in their region. Now,
it's not children that are stuck in these hotels, though. It's men. Like these kids are sneaking through like the black hole of things that are getting sexually trafficked all over the country. Children are like just being forgotten, and it's going back to the Trump era of like kids in cages from Mexico. What the world outcried about that. Why isn't there such a big outcry about this bill and what's happening to children?
Smashing, thank you. Mark, last question for you. 35% of the population think that the Tories are right on this. Do you think that this is an election winner for the Tories?
Never say never, because you've got to think they are playing a very clever game. It is four-dimensional chess, like we said with the Lineker thing is just one battle, and by winning that they can get rid of the TV license, as Jane has already said. With this, it's to get out of the European Court of Human Rights. And looking on Twitter, people are willing to give up the right to life for this. But let's be honest, this bill just won't fly. Nobody's going to get on a plane and get to end up in Rwanda. It is to unite a very nasty scene that there is in the UK of people who are willing to blame other than the real causes for why we can't get appointments at doctors or housing. It is to do them. It's like we were actually talking about it last week. That's why I wasn't in the chat last week, because I was at a meeting for the Canuck rally, and one point that was made is it's because the Tory MP in Canuck does not feel safe, so they're bringing in the refugees when Wolverhampton, which is just down the road, is a city of sanctuary. Why not put the refugees in the city of sanctuary where there are support networks, care for Callies here, and things like that to help them?
John, can I come back in and give one final point before? Sorry, Mark.
Yes, you can.
Is that all right, Mark? Sorry to interrupt.
That's what we're here for.
What we need to remember is the people who are fleeing these war-ridden countries is the fact that we bombed them countries. We, like, you look about a lot of them, like, we ruined their countries. So they're going to flee it. I mean, I'm not being funny. As a mum of three, I would do anything to get my children to safety. Whether it took me on a dinghy across the channel, I would do that. And I think that this government's forgetting that.
And can I just quickly say, this is not going to change the main things. We're still going to be problems. We're still going to have not enough doctors, not enough places in school. And what are the Tories going to blame next? They tried to blame Europe. They're trying to blame refugees. If they get this through, who are they going to blame next? The left? Teachers?
Poorly people?
Yeah, possibly. Let's start euthanasia. Oh, that was something in 1936, if I remember rightly, in Germany. But we won't go there.
Don't mention COVID and care homes to me, Mark.
Don't start me either.
One of the things, just before we move on, one of the things that upsets me most about this is that when we're faced with this absolute evil, and I'm ashamed to be a member of a country that is trying to bring in this law, when we're faced with this, the Labour Party, because it's so frightened of saying anything might upset these right-wing people who they want to either stay at home or vote for us, and not taking a firm line on the fact that there's international laws and we ought to jolly well be obeying them, and that the cause of all this is that there are no safe routes set up abroad which allow people to apply in their own country for asylum. That's why they're coming on the boats. And it's just lost. Nobody, not the Labour Party, is saying we need to set up safe routes. And I'm ashamed to be a part of that country.
Well said, John.
I think we need to move on to other stories. I don't know whether we are doing.
Wait for the music.
You all right? Yeah, we go. Okay. The last question, and this is where I'm going to start reading your comments, people. What would because this is you're the stars. You are the stars of the show. What?
I am, John. Thanks.
Well, yes, you as well, Kirsty, but don't tell them. It's a secret between you and me. What do you want to see in the budget? We've got a budget. If you were the Chancellor, what one thing would you put in the budget? And while you're thinking and putting your ideas down, because we're going to come to them, I'm going to ask my guests what they would. So, Kerry, what one thing? Kerry. What one thing? I know you. Yeah. What one thing would you have in your budget?
I would automatically give the £20 a week uplift to universal credit that was cut.
Absolutely.
And extend it to legacy benefits.
I was reading today in Polly Toynbee's article that the poorest people in this country are 20% worse off than the poorest people in Slovenia.
Yeah, it's unreal.
Eastern Europe. We got this massive gap, haven't we? 20% uplift. So how would you pay for it, Kerry?
Look at BP, Shell, for a start. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you can afford to pay £4 million, is it £4 billion? Sorry, is it £4 billion to France to keep refugees on their side of the water? You can afford to sort your own people out in the poorest in society.
Well done. Thank you very much indeed. What have we got? Oh, I hope people are beginning to get going here. Neil Terry, inflation matching pay rises for public sector's workers. Absolutely agree, Neil. And the fact is that the economy isn't doing as badly as everybody thought it would. Inflation's bottoming out. There's not a recession like they thought. They were going to do pay rises, are sort of not heading over 10%. They can afford to give more money to public sector's workers. Jacqueline Hemmings, God bless you. So lovely to see you, Jacqueline. Hello. Building energy efficient council homes. Why are we not doing this already? Well, the answer to the price of energy is surely, Jacqueline, absolutely right. Let's give people homes that actually make their own electricity and are well insulated and don't cost £1 million to keep warm. Brilliant. Kirsty Smith, wealth tax. That's the answer. Shh, don't tell anybody. Neil Terry abolished the bedroom tax. This is interesting. Does anybody want to comment on that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. If you're in social housing and you're in more allocated bedrooms than what you're supposed to be doing, my neighbour is a guardian of her grandson and she's in a 3-bedroom house like myself. And she has to pay £25 a fortnight bedroom tax.
Thank you. And it's another of these Tory things that, we'll get people out of the big houses so that the big houses, there's more housing. This will solve that.
No smaller houses though, John.
Didn't at all. Rubbish. It was nonsense. Okay. Neil Terry. Hi, I said one Neil Terry. Well,
he's always in, Neil. He's always in there.
The sort of nationalising the energy markets, that's not going to happen even under a Labour government, but yes, I would. Leanne, uplift, restore to universal credit and legacy benefits too. Jacqueline Hemmings, aren't we increasing our defence budget by 5 billion? I think it's 4 billion, Jacqueline.
Yeah, it is 4.
Nobody's asking how we can afford that. Absolutely true. Anthony Riley, God bless you, Anthony. Tax the billionaires and the multimillionaires. I think you don't need to tax them. You just need to stop the tax loopholes that they're sort of being given. Let's see what our guests think. Mark, what was the one thing that you would do to...
I mean, I am somebody who does dabble in modern monetary theory, and do we need to raise money as a sovereign country when we can literally create it? But one of the good things about tax is it does burn money when people get it incorrectly. And one thing I think we should start looking at is the parity between income tax from when you work with your hands and brain, and what I like to call passive income. So things like share dividends, rental income, they are not taxed at the same. For my sins, I applied to my work to get shares through the scheme. And I noticed that once I was lucky, because it was during the crash, I get about the same as a month's pay packet in dividends. That doesn't get taxed. Now, to be fair to the government, they have brought that down from 5,000 to about 2,000 now, before when it will get into capital gains. But I think it should be the same as normal income tax. We need to bring capital gains tax in line with income tax. Some might say that's unfair, but isn't it not fair on those who work with their hands and work a normal job, the way they get their money? That's the way a lot of these rich people, they actually get their salaries as profit, because they have a company that is paid to do for them, offering the service of their job.
Polly Toynbee, if you're listening, in today's Guardian, I think it's today's Guardian, Polly Toynbee has an amazing article on what we could do to reform the tax system. One of the things she points out, Mark, is that retired people like myself don't pay national income, but we've got income, national insurance, but we've got income coming in, perhaps from dividends, certainly from savings. Why are we not paying national insurance anymore? And many retired people are well enough off council taxes and other foul taxes, rather than it's completely reforming.
Sorry, John, are you just saying why aren't you paying national insurance anymore?
Why don't I pay national insurance? I don't pay national insurance.
Because you paid in all your life. Why should you have to pay it in your retirement years? You paid your stamp your whole entire life.
No, actually, it's just a myth that the sort of that you're paying for your pension. The fact is that it's just another form of taxation, isn't it? And they pay for the pension out of tax.
I don't agree. After a pension age, you should be paying into the system, and you put enough into the system throughout your working years. I don't agree with that.
Didn't put anywhere like what I'm taking out, but we'll fall out about that later, Kerry. This is me wanting to pay more tax.
You're falling out, we know.
So you can get rid of your bedroom tax. So Jane, what was the one thing you would do?
So, sorry, John, just before that, I just wanted to say on the bedroom tax, if you're disabled in this country, you don't get a lot of choice about where you live. If you can't afford to buy, you can't rent because places aren't adapted to people's needs. So you're at the mercy of what you can get in terms of council housing. So there are disabled people who have no choice but to live in a 2-bedroom flat or house who are paying bedroom tax out of their money, and they've got no choice about that. And I think that's very wrong. But the thing I was
just interrupting you, Jane, I'm so sorry, but I'll just say this quickly. I absolutely campaigned against the bedroom tax, which is absolute evil. And one of the things it did is that it brought in the principle that you have no right to a home. You've only got a right to a house while you need it. And as soon as that house gets a bit big for you, you're out, whether you like it or not. Obviously, it's not true if you own your house, but if it's a council house, social housing house, you're out.
Yeah.
And the result is that you haven't got a home. And one of the wonderful things about council houses was a family would move in there, and then they have children, and the children would move away, and grandma and granddad would still be living there. And it gave stability to communities as well as stability to families. And it was your base as a family. And they took that away. They destroyed society. Cameron destroyed society quite as much as Thatcher did in the 1980s, and just absolutely evil. So anybody who wants the Chancellor to abolish that has my support. Jane, I was interrupted you rudely and had a little rant. What were you going to say?
No, I agree with you, John. A home, everyone needs a home for their mental health, and a home is not the same as a house or a flat. You need stability. But I was going to say, and it was really hard to pick one, but so I'd say a big investment in green infrastructure and public transport across the entire UK, with a Green New Deal, basically providing good quality jobs to people. And I think that infrastructure would put money back into local economies all around the country, which would go back round. I wouldn't care really whether it's paid for from a wealth tax, through a windfall tax on energy companies, through borrowing money, if it's called borrowing, from the Bank of England, or through quantitative easing. I think it would be a good idea to look at all of those things, because in the long run that would really pay off for us to do that.
Thank you. Basically, you're not going to get any of those things. The word on the street is that he's going to put a lot of money into childcare, which I don't suppose is too bad.
And he's going to abolish prepayment meeting standard charges, apparently.
Well, I hope so. That would be good if he did that. He's going to increase the tax-free pension allowance to try and persuade people, give them a financial incentive to work longer. So he's going to have us all working when we should be retiring. Is going to create investment areas and try and encourage investment into tech hubs. You're going to put 4 billion into the armed forces. The Guardian's editorial, he's not even trying to fix broken Britain. He's just fiddling.
And they're going to tighten sanctions.
We'll see. I hope. I mean, just an.
And the Labour Party agree with them, and that's what absolutely infuriates me.
We'll see. I have no doubt, ladies and gentlemen listening, that what we'll be doing is we'll be discussing what he actually did next week.
It's a good job I'm not on next week.
Sort of, I don't know. We'd have to have. So I think we need a firebrand on next week. Sort of,
Thanks, John.
Okay, and I'm going to bring it to an end. So first of all, I hope that if you're listening, you agree that they've done fabulously today. Kerry, buy a TV license quickly, because the man's on his way around at this moment.
He was only here last week, John, and I told him to do one. So I'm stabbed.
Thank you, Kerry, for your outspokenness and your absolute from the hip enthusiasm. We love you to
solidarity with our teachers striking tomorrow and Thursday.
Yes, yep. Mark Lungley, God bless you. Thank you for coming on.
That's no Bob's.
No, absolutely, Jay. And Jane, as always, sort of suddenly, Jane, you become the senior guest, haven't you? Really?
That was me, John.
Sort of. We all know Jane's the boss. For goodness' sake, Kerry, stop trying to pretend. You're just the star here, right? Okay, Jane. I'm going to hand over to you now. If you can just spend a minute sort of giving the blurb, and then what we'll do is we'll get the techie guys to close us down. Jane, the show.
Oh, thank you for joining us tonight, everyone. If you want to hear more from Socialist Think Tank, that we can go onto the website www.socialistthinktank.com, and you can find podcasts of previous shows on there, and you can become a member, which is free, and your membership and engagement is really valued. If you can afford to contribute anything, that's also really appreciated. You can subscribe to the channel on YouTube, which is also good for us, and find all the videos of past shows on there, or you can find some podcast platforms as well. So thank you, everyone, and have a lovely rest of the evening.
Bye-bye.
We keep the red flag flying here.